Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of Coding in Python for Absolute Beginners. In this episode, we will recap on what we did last episode, and then I'll explain Python extensions and how to make them, how to run a Python program, and the basic principles of coding in Python. So let's get started. So first, let's recap about what we did last episode. Last episode, we set up the environment in which we actually write our programs and run our programs. So we installed Python, which is the programming language that we're going to be learning how to code in. Then we installed a text editor of your choice, which is where we will write our code in. Now, a text editor, personally, for this tutorial, I'm just going to be using Visual Studio Code. You can use any one you want. They all pretty much do the same thing. They're all great. It's just your personal preference. And so then we created a folder called Python test, which holds all our project files, such as our coding files, our Python files, our folders, etc. Then we created a blank Python program called helloworld.py, as you see right here. And if you haven't seen episode 1, please click the link in the description below before we continue on with this tutorial. Alright guys, so now let me explain what the .py extension at the end of our blank helloworld.py program is. So basically, the .py it tells the computer that this is a Python program and should not be opened as just a regular text document. And so it should be ran as a Python program. And so keep in mind that whenever you are creating a Python program, that you always need to have the .py extension, or else it won't work and it won't be a Python program. If the extension part of the file does not show up, as Windows defaultly hides the extension at the end, then all you need to do is go to View in the project folder and then check File Name Extensions. If you uncheck it, this is what you should get. That means the extension is hidden. If you go to View again and then check it, File Name Extension will pop right back up. And there you go. Now that you know how to set up your development environment, create a new Python project, and create a blank Python program file with the correct programming language extension, we can dive straight into coding with our newly created blank Python program. So let's open up helloworld.py. And I have my default text editor set to Visual Studio Code. If you can't open it by double-clicking the Python file as by default, and since you've newly installed your development environment, then all you need to do is launch your text editor. So launch my text editor, and then just go to File, and then go to Open File. Once you're at Open File, find the Python program and double click it. And now you're inside the window where we can start writing code. Alright, so now that you have opened helloworld.py, or whatever your first program name that you chose to be, let's start writing our first program. So the first thing we're going to write is a very simple program that'll just print out a function, strings, and I'll teach you how to run the program. So this will just teach us the basics of the print function, strings, variables, and if-else statements if we have time to get to that. So first off, let's just close out the welcome window. And what you're going to do for the first program is you're just going to type in print, parentheses, and then type in whatever you want here. I'm going to just type in hello world. Since this is our first program, so let's just bring it to life, right? So let me explain what I just did here if I went a little too fast. So the print function basically tells the computer that, okay, so whatever inside the parentheses I want to print to the program, meaning I want it to, that text inside the program, inside the print function should be shown inside the console or the window or the graphical user interface, or the GUI for short. So basically anything inside the print function will be printed to the screen. That's how I remember it, is basically it's printed to the screen. So just remember that once you've made a change inside the text editor, you need to save it. So it's usually the command for text editors to save the file is just Control S for short, or you can just go to File and you can go to Save. It works the same way. I just personally like Control S better. It's faster, saves a little bit of time. And so yeah. So So we have our first program here ready. So next thing we need to do is we need to know how to run the program. So in order to run it, you just go through command prompt. So go to start and then type in command prompt, right? And then there you are, you're in command prompt. So now you can't go straight to running your program. You need to change the directory to the file folder that you have your program in, because then it'll just be like telling the computer to run a file that's not even in the same directory as the user. So basically where we are right now is, let me show you. We are in my C drive, we are in users, we are in Krishna. So here is where we are. As you can see, our program file hello world.py is not in this folder. So in order for us to get to that, we need to change our folder. So type in cd, and I put mine on the desktop, as you guys remember. Let me just minimize this a little bit. As you can see, this is on the desktop, so we got to access this folder right here. So in order to access that, let's go back in, cd to the desktop, so now we're in this desktop, and then backslash, and then go to Python test. Alright, so now we are inside this folder. Alright, so now we can access our hello world.py. So what's the command to run a Python program, you might ask? Well, it's pretty simple. All you have to do, type in Python, and then type in the name of your program. But include the extension. This is why I stress, very importantly, if you don't have the extension, then the program won't run. You won't be able to type in it, you won't be able to code in it, you won't be able to do anything in it. So just remember the extensions for the specific language you're trying to learn. So once you've written down Python and whatever name of your program is, just press enter, and it ran with no errors. So this is basically a no error program ran. So like there's nothing that went wrong. It went perfectly as we wanted it to. It printed hello comma world exclamation mark, exactly like we told it to right here. Right, voila. So basically programming is just a set of instructions you're giving the computer to do. So you want specific tasks done, you can use the computer to program it, you know. So it's very simple. Now let me show you exactly how to debug an error, or let's say something that went wrong in your program. You don't know what went wrong. Well, the console is our command prompt. This is our console, and this will tell us what exactly went wrong once we ran the program. So how about we take the exclamation points out, right? So now it's just hello comma world, right? So we save that, and then we just run this again. It gave us an error. So it didn't run the same as the other program time, right? The reason it did is because it's an invalid syntax, meaning that hello world isn't the text that's being printed out to the console. So in order for us to be printed out, we need to have quotation. Quotation marks indicate to the program and to the computer that, okay, anything inside these quotation marks, highlighted in a different color usually in the text editor, should be printed to the console. Now anything not inside the quotation mark should not be printed, and that is anything that is outside of the quotation marks indicates to the computer by default that it is a variable. A variable is just a random set of whatever you want to assign it to. For example, we can put variable equal to a string, like string as in my name, right? So there you go. So now if we have to move this function. So we have to have the variable before you have your print function. So now we have to write down print, and then no quotations. We don't use quotations because we're trying to print out the string that is stored inside the variable, right? So in order to do that, we have to print variable. So that's all you gotta do. And so we can delete this, or we can keep that. It really doesn't matter. We could keep that. So now save it, remember to save, and then let's run it again. There we go. No errors, and it worked exactly like we wanted it to. It has hello comma world exclamation mark Krishna. So it printed out the variable that we wanted. It printed out var, or var, however you want to pronounce it, and it printed out Krishna because Krishna was stored inside variable. So that's a pretty simple concept of variables. You can store anything you want. You can even store numbers if you really wanted to. For example, 1 prints out 1, right? Now, do you think that without the quotation marks, 1 will be printed out in print? Let's find out. Take a moment here to guess the answer. All right, you have your answer in mind? It did. Why? Because numbers do not change. And so strings are basically characters, as in the alphabet. You can only accept alphabets or special cases like apostrophes, commas, dashes, slashes, etc. Those are involved inside the string, right? Numbers are not counted as a string, but they are counted as their own independent character. So if I could put as many numbers as I want, right? Let's just do like, there we go, right? Just random numbers. It'll still print out all those random numbers because it's an independent character. It doesn't rely on having a different type of set or different characteristics. But if we do that with, say, Bob, right? Do you think it'll work? Nope, we got an error because Bob is not identified or defined. So here, basically what we did was we set variable equal to Bob. Bob is not defined anywhere. Now, if we want to do a variable equal to a variable, then what we could do is Bob above variable is equal to, I don't know, let's do Bob. But now we did it in quotes or single quotes. And so that indicates to the computer that it is a string. And so just a quick little information. If there is double quotes, then that means it's also indicating to the computer that it's a string. And if it's a single quote, it's also indicating that it's to a string. I generally use the single quote for assigning a string to a variable if I only want it to be like a single word or something. And I use double quotes if I'm trying to print a long sentence or some multiple variable structure or apostrophes, etc. So this will not work. You cannot do single quotes if you want to add an apostrophe within it. So for example, let's erase this. So that's single quotes, right? Let's do Bob's apostrophe S. See, that didn't work. Why? Because the S is not included. And it just registered when I pressed the apostrophe key that the apostrophe was just ending the quote, the single quote. So what you have to do for this is you just have to use double quotes. So now we do Bob apostrophe S. It includes everything. It includes the apostrophe S, right? And that's why using double quotes is generally better if you don't know if you're going to use single quotes throughout your sentence or program. But if you're just assigning a single word or variable, it's pretty easy to just do single quotes. So that's just a little helpful tip right there. You don't have to use it. You can always use double quotes if you want to. I sometimes just interchangeably use both. So yeah. So let's get back into setting a variable equal to another variable. So let's say variable is equal to Bob. So that means Bob is equal to the string Bob's, or we could just change this to Bob, right? Well, let's say Bob is now being printed whenever variable is being printed, right? So let's run it again. There we go. Now it prints Bob. Now we don't get the error like we did over here. It doesn't say Bob is not defined because Bob is defined. That means this is a global variable. A global variable means that the variable carries out throughout the entire program. And now a local variable is basically when you're using the variable for one-time use, like redefining a certain variable. Let's say I wanted to redefine a variable here. Well, all I'd have to do, variable is equal to, I don't know, Jack, right? So now I can print variable, and it'll print, will it print Bob or will it print Jack? Take a moment to guess. Print Bob. Why? Because Bob is the global variable. You can't reassign the variable if it's already been assigned beforehand. So only the first time that the variable's been assigned will be used again. So we don't need this. We don't need this. And we really don't need Bob. Who needs Bob? Alrighty. So now you have a basic understanding of how variables work and how strings are used and how to install or store strings inside variables using quotes and single quotes. And make sure you keep track of the apostrophes and this double quotes, etc. It's a small tip, but it'll help you in the long run when you're making complicated programs and you lose track of exactly what you were using in the beginning. If it runs off the page or when it runs off the line, etc. So guys, now you have a basic understanding of how variables work, how the print function works, and how you can print variables and assign certain strings, certain characters, the numbers, etc. You understand how to do single quotes, you understand how to do double quotes, when to use them, when to not use them, and how to run and debug your program. So now that you have all these skills, next episode we are going to be focusing on how to create if-else statements, which are basically a little bit more complicated. It's going to take some time for you, some of y'all to understand because it's a little bit lengthy. It's an easy way to do a repeated process or have a certain set of instructions for the computer to do in certain scenarios that, for example, make you want to answer questions, etc. So we're just going to pick up next episode starting with that. And congratulations, guys. You created your first program, created your first variable, stored your first strings and characters, and you ran your first program. So I'm proud of you guys. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Share this video. Subscribe for more content. And I will see you guys next episode. Bye.